Let me tell you something, sometimes the best thing you can do for your future is to disappear, not to run away, not to hide out of fear, but to step into the quiet place of transformation. Everybody wants to be seen, but few want to be changed. Everybody wants the stage, but few are willing to spend seasons in silence. See, you can't become who you're meant to be while you're busy proving who you already are. Let me tell you something. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your future is to disappear, not to run away, not to escape, not to give up, but to separate yourself from everything that keeps you from hearing the voice of your purpose. You see, people want transformation without isolation. They want to change without separating from the very environment that keeps them average. But transformation doesn't happen in the crowd. Transformation happens in the quiet. Transformation happens in the cocoon. When you disappear from the noise, you start to hear your own thoughts again. You start to hear the whispers of your potential. You start to remember who you really are beneath the opinions, beneath the labels, beneath the expectations. Everybody wants to be seen, but few want to be changed. Everybody wants the stage, but few are willing to spend the season in silence. The spotlight feels good, but it exposes what hasn't been developed in private. If you shine too early, the light will reveal your lack of preparation. That's why some of you feel stuck, because you keep showing up for attention instead of development. You want to be noticed before you've built the version of you that can handle being noticed. So you've got to disappear from distractions. Disconnect from the constant scrolling, the comparing, the consuming of other people's journeys. Every time you look at what someone else is doing, you rob yourself of the energy needed to create what you're supposed to be doing. Growth requires focus, and focus requires distance. Disappear from the noise long enough to hear the call that's been waiting for your obedience. Then you've got to disappear into discipline. Discipline is not punishment. It's the process of becoming powerful. It's showing up when nobody claps, working when nobody watches, believing when nobody believes. The world sees the result. Discipline lives in the rehearsal. It's those hours in the unseen, those moments of repetition, those quiet decisions to try again after failing yesterday. That's where transformation begins. When you disappear into discipline, you exchange motivation for mastery. You stop chasing inspiration and start developing consistency. That's when momentum starts working for you instead of against you. Your habits start shaping your identity. The things that used to feel heavy begin to feel normal because you've trained your spirit for strength. And then you have to disappear from people who can't see your future. Some of the folks you love the most are the ones who will hold you back the hardest, not because they're evil, but because they're comfortable. They knew you before you started to grow, and they don't know how to handle your becoming. Some people are addicted to your past. They can't function if you step into your purpose because your growth confronts their stagnation. So you have to go silent on some people, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. Stop explaining your vision to those who only understand your history. Disappear long enough for your results to speak for you. When you reappear, they won't recognize you, and that's the point. Disappear into preparation. While others are performing, you're preparing. While others are posting, you're practicing. While others are relaxing, you're refining. Preparation is the proof that you believe in the promise. When you prepare in private, you're building credibility with your future. God hides greatness until it's ready. He doesn't deny it. He develops it. So if it feels like nothing's happening, maybe everything is happening. Maybe the unseen is where you're becoming unstoppable. The caterpillar doesn't fight the cocoon. It surrenders to the process. It dies to what it was so it can live as what it's meant to be. That's the mystery of transformation. It feels like loss, but it's actually rebirth. And when you disappear into purpose, you stop chasing approval. You stop needing permission. You stop begging people to understand what they were never called to carry. Purpose becomes your compass, not applause. You start saying no to good things because you've said yes to the right thing. The noise gets quieter, your path gets clearer, and your confidence becomes unshakable. Purpose gives your pain direction. Every setback becomes a seed. Every delay becomes development. You begin to realize that disappearing was never about hiding. It was about healing. It was about rediscovering the version of you that the world tried to water down. When you disappear, you give yourself space to reintroduce yourself to yourself. You meet the person you were created to be, not the one you were conditioned to be. You start moving differently, thinking differently, expecting differently. And the beautiful thing is, nobody will see it coming. They'll think you vanished, but really you were evolving. They'll think you quit, but you were qualifying. They'll think you disappeared, but you were becoming undeniable. Transformation always requires separation, because before you can be seen as who you're meant to be, you must disappear as who you were. There comes a time in your life when you realize that who you've been is not enough to take you where you're going. You reach a point where comfort feels like confinement, where the same routines that once made sense start to suffocate your purpose. That's when you have to make a decision to disappear, not from life, not from responsibility, but from everything that keeps you attached to an outdated version of yourself. You have to disappear from distraction, from approval, from the need to be understood. Because transformation doesn't begin with addition. It begins with subtraction. You don't become new by doing more. You become new by releasing what no longer fits the vision. When you disappear, you learn the power of silence. You start realizing that noise isn't the same as progress. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're becoming. You can run in circles your whole life and still end up nowhere new. The world wants your attention because attention is energy, and when your energy is divided, your power is diluted. You have to be bold enough to separate from the noise long enough to find your signal. That's where clarity lives. That's where purpose whispers. The reason some people never change is because they can't handle being unseen. They crave visibility more than victory. But if you can embrace being hidden for a while, your growth will speak louder than your announcement ever could. When you disappear into discipline, something powerful happens inside you. You start discovering how much you've been capable of all along. Discipline strips away excuses. It doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what you're willing to commit to. It's not about intensity, it's about consistency. The small things you do every day when nobody's watching are what shape your destiny. It's easy to talk about goals, but discipline is about the grind between declarations, the repetition, the structure, the faith to keep going even when the results haven't shown up yet. You become your own accountability. You learn to depend less on motivation and more on mastery. And before you even notice, the person you used to be can't keep up with who you've become. You've also got to disappear from people who can't see your future. There are folks in your circle who like you best when you're predictable. They're comfortable with your potential staying dormant. They know how to relate to your weaknesses, but your strength threatens them. Sometimes God has to separate you from familiar faces so you can discover your true identity. You can't bring everybody into your next season. Some people are only anointed for your past, and if you keep dragging them into your future, they'll keep dragging you back into who you used to be. You don't need validation from those who can't see your vision. You just need obedience to the call on your life. That's why disappearing isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's a spiritual detox from opinions that dilute your direction. Disappearing into preparation is where destiny starts to take shape. Preparation is the difference between desire and manifestation. You can want something your whole life, but if you don't prepare for it, you'll lose it when it arrives. Preparation is proof that you're serious. It's proof that you believe your season is coming. The unseen hours you spend reading, studying, planning, praying, those are the moments that define what the world will eventually celebrate. You can't skip the preparation stage because it's the foundation that holds your blessing in place. Every skill developed in private becomes strength in public. Every quiet breakthrough becomes a loud testimony later. You don't have to broadcast your grind. Just build in silence and let your excellence make the noise. The cocoon is where real transformation happens. The caterpillar doesn't argue with the process. It doesn't resist the stillness. It disappears into a season of confinement that looks like death but is really development. The same is true for you. There are seasons where everything seems to slow down, doors close, people fade away, opportunities pause. That's not punishment, that's preparation. You're being shaped, stretched, molded for something greater. The cocoon doesn't make you less, it makes you more. It refines your character so your future doesn't collapse under your gift. When you disappear into purpose, you learn how to walk with divine confidence. You stop asking who approves and start focusing on who assigned you. You stop needing validation because purpose becomes your oxygen. It keeps you alive when nothing else makes sense. It turns pain into fuel and waiting into wisdom. Disappearing doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finding the parts of you that have been buried under fear, doubt, and distraction. It means removing the layers of limitation that life has wrapped around your potential. You start recognizing that your value was never in how visible you were. It was in how valuable you became while nobody was watching. You become sharper, wiser, calmer. The noise that used to distract you loses its power. The things that once triggered you no longer control you. You realize that transformation isn't about proving anything to the world. It's about becoming everything you were designed to be. There are seasons in life when disappearing is not a retreat, it's a requirement. It's the moment when you realize that being visible too soon can cost you the transformation you were meant to have. The world tells you to stay active, stay loud, stay seen, but wisdom tells you to get still, get silent, and get serious about your becoming. You can't step into your divine design while holding on to distractions that dilute your focus. You've got to disappear from the patterns that keep you predictable, from the people who keep you comfortable, and from the habits that keep you average. Disappearing is not quitting. It's choosing to evolve without the pressure to explain. When you start disappearing from distractions, you begin to see how much noise you've been living with. Every scroll, every notification, every meaningless conversation takes a piece of your attention. Distraction is the silent thief of destiny. It doesn't destroy you all at once. It drains you little by little until there's nothing left for your dreams. The reason some people never manifest their purpose is because they're too distracted by things that don't matter. If you want transformation, you've got to be bold enough to step back from the noise and get intimate with your calling. Focus is the fertilizer of growth. When you disappear into focus, you stop existing for applause and start working for alignment. Then comes the discipline. You can't transform without disappearing into discipline. Discipline is the invisible bridge between intention and manifestation. It's not emotional, it's spiritual. It's what you do when no one's clapping, when no one's watching, when the motivation fades. Discipline builds the kind of strength that excitement never can. It makes you consistent when you don't feel like it. The more disciplined you become, the quieter your excuses get. You stop waiting for the perfect time and start creating progress with what you have. You stop needing to be reminded and start taking responsibility. You stop depending on hype and start depending on habit. That's the kind of transformation that lasts. But to truly change, you've got to disappear from the wrong people. Some people love your potential as long as it stays in the future. They're fine with you dreaming, but they'll start resisting when you begin developing. They'll say you've changed, and they're right. But change was always the goal. You can't keep growing while staying surrounded by those who only recognize your old version. Some people can't handle your growth because your growth exposes their comfort. So don't apologize for separating yourself. You're not leaving people behind. You're leaving limits behind. It's not your job to make everyone comfortable with your evolution. The cocoon is never crowded because transformation requires solitude. Disappear into preparation. Every great manifestation is born in hidden seasons. Preparation is where you sharpen the unseen parts of yourself. It's where you gain wisdom, strategy, and strength before the opportunity arrives. A lack of preparation turns blessings into burdens. You can't pray for a bigger platform while refusing to prepare for the pressure that comes with it. You can't ask for increase while avoiding instruction. What you build in silence determines how long you'll stand in the spotlight. Preparation gives you stability when success gives you visibility. So while others are posting, you're practicing. While others are showing off, you're studying. While others are performing, you're perfecting. And then there's the cocoon, the divine place of becoming. The caterpillar doesn't complain about the process, it embraces it. It surrenders to confinement so it can qualify for freedom. What looks like isolation is actually incubation. That's where your wings are being formed. That's where your character is being developed. The same God who hid you in the cocoon is preparing to reveal you as a butterfly. You can't skip this step. You can't rush it. If you come out too soon, you'll have wings too weak to fly. Transformation requires stillness, patience, and trust. It's the quiet work that produces loud results. When you disappear into purpose, you stop chasing people and start chasing destiny. You stop asking for validation because your value becomes undeniable. Purpose gives you direction in confusion, confidence in delay, and endurance in disappointment. It reminds you that isolation is not abandonment, it's alignment. It teaches you that not being seen is not the same as not being significant. It's in those hidden seasons that you learn the strength of surrender. You stop performing for approval and start producing from authenticity. Purpose refines your motives until everything you do flows from clarity, not insecurity. Disappearing doesn't make you invisible, it makes you intentional. It strips away the noise so you can hear your name being called by something higher. It's not about running from the world, it's about returning to yourself. You don't owe anyone an explanation for going silent while you're growing. You're not missing out on life. You're preparing for it. Every great version of you is waiting on the other side of silence, focus, and faith. When you finally emerge, people will think you came out of nowhere, but you'll know you came out of preparation. There comes a point in your life when you realize that you can't stay the same and expect a different outcome. Transformation isn't something that happens by accident. It's a deliberate process of disappearing from the things that weaken you so you can appear in the places that strengthen you. The problem with most people is they want change without separation. They want elevation without isolation. They want growth without letting go. But you can't build a new life while clinging to the patterns of your old one. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is to walk away quietly from everything that no longer aligns with your next level. You have to disappear from distractions, disappear into discipline, and disappear from people who keep reminding you of who you were instead of celebrating who you're becoming. When you start disappearing from distractions, you'll notice how much of your energy has been leaking into meaningless things. Every notification, every conversation that doesn't feed your purpose, every comparison you entertain drains your creative power. Distractions are designed to make you feel productive while keeping you unproductive. They keep you busy doing things that don't move you forward. Transformation requires a withdrawal from the noise. You have to create sacred space for silence, reflection, and focus. Because when you're constantly reacting to everything around you, you can't respond to what's happening within you. Disappearing from distractions is not about being antisocial, it's about being intentional. It's choosing your destiny over digital noise, your purpose over popularity, and your growth over gossip. Then you have to disappear into discipline. Discipline is the hidden ingredient behind every visible success. It's what separates dreamers from doers, wishers from winners, and the inspired from the consistent. Discipline means showing up even when the excitement is gone, even when nobody notices, even when progress feels slow. It's the quiet commitment that builds unstoppable momentum. Discipline doesn't ask if you're in the mood. It demands that you show up regardless of how you feel. It transforms chaos into structure and structure into success. You'll discover that consistency doesn't just change your circumstances, it changes your identity. Every time you follow through, you're teaching your mind that you can be trusted. And when you trust yourself, you stop depending on others for motivation. You'll also need to disappear from people who can't handle your growth. Not everyone is meant to go with you to the next level. Some people are attached to your old story and can't comprehend your new chapter. They're comfortable with your struggle, but intimidated by your strength. They liked you better when you were unsure because your insecurity made them feel important. You have to love yourself enough to release people who drain your energy. Some relationships expire when your awareness expands. You can't keep explaining your purpose to those who are committed to misunderstanding it. When you disappear from those who can't see your future, you make room for those who will help you build it. Isolation isn't loneliness. It's alignment. It's you creating room for the right people, the right thoughts, and the right opportunities. Disappear into preparation because preparation is what makes the invisible visible. You can't just pray for the next level. You have to prepare for it. What you do when no one is watching is what determines what happens when everyone is. Preparation is where potential becomes performance. It's where you master the skill, strengthen the mindset, and cultivate the patience to carry what's coming. The reason many people never see results is because they want to be seen before they're ready. You have to build in private until your excellence is undeniable. The world rewards results, but results are born in rehearsal. When you prepare in silence, you create confidence that can't be shaken by circumstance. You don't have to prove anything when you know you've prepared for everything. Transformation always requires a season of obscurity. The caterpillar doesn't broadcast its change, it disappears into the cocoon. Inside that space, it's unrecognizable, unseen, and completely surrendered to the process. It's not glamorous, it's not public, but it's necessary. There are seasons when life forces you into that cocoon. Doors close, people fade away, opportunities pause, and it feels like everything is falling apart. But what's really happening is that everything that no longer serves you is being stripped away so the new you can emerge. The cocoon is uncomfortable because it demands death to the old identity. It's a sacred place of transformation where who you are can't survive who you're becoming. And when you disappear into purpose, you stop seeking permission to grow. You stop waiting for the world to validate your value. Purpose gives you a sense of peace that no applause can replace. It keeps you grounded when life gets chaotic and hopeful when the path feels unclear. Purpose doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be lived. The moment you align your daily actions with your divine assignment, everything starts to shift. You move from confusion to clarity, from anxiety to assurance, from chasing to attracting. Purpose turns pressure into preparation and pain into positioning. It reminds you that every season of disappearance is just a setup for a greater display of who you truly are. There comes a time when disappearing is the only way to truly evolve. It's the moment when the noise around you becomes louder than the voice within you, when the distractions start outnumbering your desires, when comfort starts costing you your calling. That's when you must make the choice to vanish from everything that no longer aligns with who you are becoming. You can't stay visible to what drains you and expect to grow into what sustains you. Disappearing is not about running away. It's about rising in private. It's about choosing silence over approval, growth over attention, preparation over presentation. Every great transformation begins with a disappearance, because you can't be reborn in the same environment that wounded you. When you disappear from distractions, you take your power back. The world trains you to stay connected, to always be watching, scrolling, reacting, comparing. But every second you spend looking at someone else's path, you lose focus on your own. Distractions are the enemy of destiny because they don't destroy your dreams. They delay them until you no longer recognize yourself. You have to separate yourself from the noise long enough to hear the truth again. You can't hear your purpose over the sound of opinions. You can't create clarity in a world addicted to chaos. Disappearing gives you space to think, to feel, to remember why you started. You begin to realize that not every invitation deserves a response. Not every opportunity is aligned with your assignment, and not every connection is meant to continue. Growth requires focus, and focus requires distance. Then you disappear into discipline. Discipline is the bridge between what you want and what you're willing to work for. It's not emotional, it's intentional. Discipline doesn't need to feel good to be good. It demands consistency when convenience calls you away. It demands effort when excuses feel easier. You don't need motivation when you have discipline, because discipline outlasts mood swings and emotions. The world rewards results, and results reward routine. The more disciplined you become, the freer you feel, because structure creates stability. The chaos that once controlled you begins to fade when your habits start aligning with your vision. Every repetition in silence, every commitment kept in the dark is building a future that will speak loudly for you one day. The real transformation happens not when people see you succeed, but when you no longer need to be seen to stay consistent. You have to disappear from people who only recognize your old identity. There will always be people who are comfortable with your past, but intimidated by your potential. They love the version of you that needed them, not the version of you that outgrew them. When you start changing, they'll accuse you of acting different, and they'll be right. You're supposed to act different because you're becoming different. You can't evolve and remain accessible to every energy. Separation is not rejection, it's protection. It's not that you think you're better than them, it's that you finally realize you were meant for better than that environment. Some people are seasonal lessons, not lifetime partners. You can't expect long-term fruit from temporary soil. The moment you choose growth, you'll outgrow certain conversations, certain atmospheres, and certain mindsets. Don't apologize for it. Transformation demands elevation. And elevation requires separation. Disappearing into preparation is the secret to unstoppable success. Everyone wants to shine, but few want to sharpen. The reason some people stay stuck is that they keep showing up unprepared for the opportunities they prayed for. Preparation is proof of belief. When you prepare, you're telling the universe, I'm ready for what I asked for. Preparation builds confidence before exposure. It strengthens the unseen parts of your character so your public success doesn't collapse under private weakness. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, but it's necessary. While others are performing, you're practicing. While others are resting, you're refining. While others are complaining, you're constructing. The private work is what gives power to the public results. What you rehearse in the dark determines how you rise in the light. The cocoon is where the miracle happens. It's not beautiful, it's not comfortable, but it's necessary. The caterpillar doesn't enter the cocoon to escape. It enters to evolve. It surrenders completely the process, not knowing what it will become, but trusting that what it will become is greater than what it has been. Transformation requires that same surrender. You can't become new while holding on to the comfort of the old. Growth doesn't feel like glory in the moment. It feels like grief. It feels like letting go of familiar versions of yourself. It feels like uncertainty, like being hidden, like losing visibility. But that hiddenness is where your wings form, where your strength multiplies, where your purpose matures. The cocoon is the classroom of greatness, and only those willing to endure the silence graduate into flight. When you disappear into purpose, everything starts to make sense. Purpose gives meaning to the waiting, power to the process, and peace to the pain. You stop chasing people and start chasing destiny. You stop needing applause because you found assignment. You stop looking for validation because you found vision. Purpose is the place where confusion dies and clarity is born. It realigns your heart, refocuses your mind, and reignites your spirit. Once you disappear into purpose, you realize that you were never lost. You were just being refined for something bigger than what the world could see. There is a moment in every person's life when silence becomes more powerful than speech, when disappearing becomes more productive than doing, when separation becomes the starting point of transformation. The world tells you to stay visible, stay active, stay loud, but true transformation requires you to step away from the noise and into the stillness where clarity is born. You can't discover who you're meant to be while you're constantly performing for people who don't even know who they are. The process of disappearing isn't about being absent. It's about being aligned. It's about stepping back from distractions long enough to reconnect with your direction. Growth doesn't happen in the crowd. It happens in the quiet. You can't elevate if you're always available. Sometimes you have to disappear not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that isolation is where transformation begins. When you disappear from distractions, you start realizing how much time and energy you've wasted on things that don't matter. Every scroll, every meaningless conversation, every pointless argument steals a piece of your destiny. You were not created to be constantly entertained. You were created to be effective. Distractions don't always come dressed as danger. Sometimes they show up disguised as comfort, attention, or routine. You have to be bold enough to choose purpose over pleasure and progress over popularity. The more you focus on what matters, the more you realize how little you actually need. Disappearing from distractions allows you to hear your inner voice again, the one that's been drowned out by notifications and noise. That's where vision returns. That's where you begin to build from alignment instead of anxiety. Then comes the part where you disappear into discipline. Discipline is the proof that you're serious about transformation. It's not glamorous, it's not instant, but it's essential. Discipline builds what motivation starts. It's easy to feel inspired for a day, but discipline keeps you consistent for a lifetime. Every morning you wake up and choose discipline over doubt. You're rewriting your identity. You're teaching your mind that you are in control, not your feelings. You're proving to yourself that you can trust yourself. Transformation doesn't come from wishing, it comes from working, from showing up when it's inconvenient, from refusing to quit when it's uncomfortable. Discipline is the invisible force that makes visible success possible. Every quiet repetition, every unseen effort, every late night of preparation is a seed that will eventually grow into success. You also have to disappear from people who can't handle your growth. Some people are comfortable with your potential as long as it doesn't exceed their expectations. They love the version of you that was predictable, dependent, and easy to understand. The moment you start growing, they start doubting. The moment you start moving differently, they start questioning. But you can't shrink yourself to stay in spaces that no longer fit your spirit. You have to protect your peace from people who feed on your insecurity. Growth will cost you relationships, but it will pay you back with revelation. The people who are meant for your next season will recognize your evolution. The ones who aren't will resent it. Stop apologizing for becoming what you were always meant to be. Separation is not punishment. It's preparation for a higher dimension of destiny. Disappear into preparation, because what you do in private is what determines what God can trust you with in public. Most people want exposure without endurance. They want the spotlight without the sacrifice. But preparation is where greatness is born. The unseen work you do, the quiet studying, the private refining, the self-correction, that's where transformation solidifies. You can't skip the preparation season because it builds the foundation for sustainability. A blessing you're not prepared for will feel like a burden when it arrives. Preparation sharpens your mind, strengthens your character, and steadies your emotions so that when the opportunity comes, you're ready to handle it with excellence. The waiting season isn't wasted time, it's working time. It's where purpose is perfected in silence. The cocoon is the classroom of transformation. When a caterpillar disappears, it doesn't stop existing, it starts evolving. It willingly enters a dark, quiet space and lets go of everything it used to be. The cocoon is uncomfortable, it's isolating, and it's silent, but inside that stillness, something divine is happening. Everything the caterpillar needs to fly is being formed in that invisible space. That's exactly what happens when you disappear. You might feel unseen, but you are being developed. The old parts of you are dying so that the powerful parts of you can emerge. What looks like isolation is actually incubation. You're not being buried, you're being planted. When you finally emerge, you'll move differently, think differently, speak differently because you've been refined in the silence, and then you disappear into purpose. Purpose is the place where pain makes sense and process becomes powerful. Purpose reminds you why you can't quit, why you had to disappear, why you had to go silent for a season. Purpose is the compass that points you back to your calling when the world tries to distract you. Once you align with purpose, you stop chasing validation because you realize you were never meant to be understood by everyone. Purpose gives your pain direction, your silence meaning, and your discipline significance. It turns every hidden season into preparation for the stage you were meant to stand on. When you disappear into purpose, you stop living from attention and start living from intention. You start creating from clarity, leading from conviction, and walking with confidence knowing that every moment of disappearing was never about hiding, it was about becoming.